Hey, I'm Jim Bequette. I'm here with my good friend David Blanton. We're going to do a number of videos here about our experiences in the outdoors and filming. I've spent over 40 years in the outdoor industry, hunting, fishing, shooting, just about everything you can imagine. And David and I combined probably have spent over 100 years together
Yes, yes.
in the outdoors. We think you're going to like what we have to talk about today. The first topic, in fact, is going to be talking about David's experiences in the field, and we've titled this segment "Hunts from Hell." And I'm sure, David, we could talk all day long
Yes.
about your experiences. But I'm curious, when you get into a camp and you can tell, just your gut feeling is, this isn't going to go in the right direction. What do you do? How do you manage to deal with something like that?
Well, Jim, having been here for so long, we have had those occasions and those hunts that did not go as planned at all. It's kind of comical now that you think back on it, but at the time it was
Panic.
not. And the first hunt that comes to mind was, I don't know, 30 years ago. We had been hunting whitetails up in the northwest region of the U.S., Idaho, and even Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a guy that reached out to us to come out and bow hunt his whitetails in Washington State. They have a little pocket of whitetails out there. And it sounded great. He had 5,000 or 6,000 acres that he had to hunt, and he had a little outfitting business, and he'd sent us some pictures of some videos they'd gotten on the old trail cams, the physical picture. So Bill and I go out there, and of course I'm running camera, and we land. And immediately when we landed, the guy's story changed. Like on the ride from the airport to camp, he went from having several thousand acres to hunt to something had happened. He'd had a run-in with the landowner. Unfortunately, he didn't have the land he used to have. And he said, well, I'm going to ride you by and show you the property that you're going to be hunting. So we said, okay, cool, that's good. Well, we ride by, and in the blink of an eye, we're done with looking at the property. It's like, wait a minute, that was it? And he said, well, yeah. He said, I was like, well, how many acres do you have now? He says, oh, I don't know, there's 30 or 40. And he went from several thousand acres to 30 or 40 acres all along a county road. And Bill and I, we still were going to give the old college effort, but after a day, we realized this isn't going to happen. So we just cut our losses, packed up, and left. But that's one of the extreme cases. The other hunt that Bill Jordan to this day still talk about, early 90s again, Alberta, whitetail hunting. That's back when Alberta was just becoming a thing, a hot spot for deer hunters to go and hunt. Mm-hmm. So we had been introduced to this outfitter to come hunt whitetails with him during bow season. So he picks us up at the Edmonton, Alberta airport. This is no joke. On the way out, Bill and I, we're pumped, we're excited. Like we can't believe we're in Alberta. Bill's gonna be hunting, and we're gonna be filming for our TV show. Well, the guy kept talking about he was having issues with his girlfriend. And we're like, wait a minute, we're here to deer hunt. And he said, yeah, we've got some good deer. Golly, I still love her. And we were looking at each other like, what this guy? Well, we didn't realize what kind of issues he was having with his girlfriend. On about the second or third day of the hunt, he is to meet us at dark, pick us up on this road at dark. Mm-hmm. We were going to walk out to this road. And we're in the middle of nowhere. So Bill and I walk out at dark. Nobody's there to pick us up. And so after about an hour or two, there's a light way down the road on a house, and Bill says, I think we ought to walk down to that house and just see if we can get a ride back to camp, which is 30 miles from there. We walked down to that house, knocked on the door. Nowadays you wouldn't do that. And they answered the door, and there's two guys dressed in camo. They don't know, hunting, but they were so nice. They gave us a ride back to camp. Well, we go in and eat dinner with the cook, and there's food, and we're sitting there eating, and the outfitter's there, the one that's supposed to pick us up. And he's sitting there eating soup, and he never even looked at anybody at the table. And he got up, and he went to his bedroom, and we're like, this is crazy, right? This is weird. We all eventually go to bed. At 2 o'clock in the morning, the phone starts ringing. Bill and I are sharing a room together. Bill goes, David. I go, what? He says, go answer that phone. Somebody's calling. Well, I had a family at home with my children were very young. I said, well, they may be calling me. Mm-hmm. So I go in and I answer the phone. I said, hello. And they asked to speak to the outfitter. I said, well, he's asleep. And they said, well, this is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. We need to speak to him right now. I said, yes, sir. So I walk down the hallway to where his room is. I see the lights on in his bedroom. I knock on the door. Yeah. I said, hey, you got a phone call. I open the door up. He's sitting on the edge of the bed smoking a cigarette, and the room is full of cigarette smoke. He's never taken his clothes off. And I was like, okay, something bad. They come, by now we got flashing lights in the yard. They come, they pick him up, put him in handcuffs, haul him off. Unbeknownst to us, the evening that he was supposed to pick Bill and I up at dark,
Yeah.
he had gone and kidnapped his girlfriend from where she worked. Oh, yeah. And so he got locked up and went to jail. And so you talking about hunts from hell? Yeah, we've had our share of those.
That's a new one. I haven't heard anything close to that.
Oh, yeah.
I've been on hunts where, you meet the guy at 10 o'clock in the morning and he's already well lubricated. I'm sure you've run into those situations.
Yeah.
And I've been on hunts where, you're sitting in a truck with the guide. Now, one hunt in Wyoming, it was a mule deer hunt, and we're sitting there in the dark waiting for the sun to come up, and I said, he looked young, and he's like, I said, so how did you get into the guiding business? And he goes, well, he said, basically the reason they hired me is because I have a pickup truck.
Wow.
And he was skipping school to be out guiding with me, and I'm going, and it went south from there, it was.
Well, luckily for us, our experiences have been 95% very positive.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible hunts.
Sure.
Awesome hunts. And then there was the hunt, we went to hunt this new Indian reservation in Canada. We were going to be the first hunters ever to hunt this Indian reservation.
Oh.
We were so excited about this opportunity. And we show up, and we instantly recognize that there's a lot of angst or conflict between us being there and most of the Indians. They didn't want us there hunting. Mm-hmm. And after about 2 days of hunting, people were going to their box blinds to hunt before daylight. Only to find out that their box blind had been burned to the ground during the night by the other Indians. Like, they went around and they found every box blind that we were hunting, and they were torching them all.
Oh my God.
That hunt didn't go so well either. So we've had a few of those. Then we've had the hunts that people have asked me before, Jim, when did you fear for your life during your job? Have you ever had a hunt where you literally feared for your life? And I immediately take them back to the Encinitas Ranch in South Texas that we hunted years ago, and we hunted it for years.
Yeah, yeah.
We used to take a lot of turkey hunters out there, outdoor riders such as yourself and some other TV. This is back before TV was a big thing, you know, but we would take a lot of riders. And one afternoon, Bill and I were standing outside the house we stayed in with our riders. We had a group of riders. We just got in. Here comes Bubba, the ranch foreman, driving down the driveway. And we've known Bubba for a few years at this point. Nice guy. Pulls up in a brand new Chevrolet pickup truck. And he pulls up, and when he does, we see the entire driver's side of the truck caved in. And I said, Bubba, what'd you do to your new truck? He says, well, that's kind of the reason I'm here. So Bill and I are like, what? What? He says, I just want to tell you guys, I've never seen these bulls on this ranch. It's 45,000 acres. And they had cows and some bulls, but they were wild. They were basically wild. They didn't see people very often. He says, these bulls are acting crazy in the breeding season. He said, they've lost their mind this year. I went up to check on a group of cows the other day, and this bull just charged the truck and caved in, then kept hitting the truck. He said, they've lost their mind this year, so y'all be careful. When you're out there turkey hunting, please be careful. So we were like, okay, well, whatever, we won't have a problem. And I am hunting with an outdoor rider, and you know him well from Kansas, Mike Pierce.
Oh, yeah.
I'm guiding, filming, and Mike and I are turkey hunting. And I got this big 30-pound camera back in the day, the big 20-pound tripod, and we're working this turkey, and we're trying to get around in front of him. He's gobbling, but we're trying to make a move on him. We come around, and we look, and just when we cleared the mesquite, there was 7 or 8 cows, and a bull. And I was like, ooh, okay, we just need, well, about that time, he looks up, and this bull literally sees Mike and I. And it wasn't like he thought about, should I run at them? Like the instant he saw us, here he comes on a dead run. Well, by the grace of God, and I mean this, because if it wasn't for the grace of God, I wouldn't be here today.
Really?
We happened to be standing by one of the very few oak monts on the ranch, little groups of live oak trees that you could climb very easily. But before we know it, adrenaline's kicked in. Mike and I are 8 feet off the ground on this live oak trunk. Like literally, within seconds, this bull comes skidding to a stop underneath us. And his snot is going everywhere, and he is pawing the ground, and he is running into the tree, and like he wanted to kill us. And I'll never forget, we're up there and we're fine, and Mike looks at me and he goes, where's your camera? And I look beyond the bull, 20 yards on the tripod. In the haste of everything, I set the camera on the tripod down on the ground, just set it up on the ground so we could climb the tree. Like it happened that fast. And I looked out there and I see the bull and I see the camera, and I said, Mike, that ain't my camera, that's Bill Jordan's camera. And there's $60,000 worth of camera equipment sitting out there. That bull turned around and sees that camera. I don't know how payroll deduction works, but it was going to be a problem. So we're sitting up there, and this bull won't leave. And Mike goes, you know, it's crazy this year how these bulls are at. And he said in Kansas, where he was from, he said there was a rancher right outside of Wichita last week, went to feed his bulls. He never came back home. And his wife goes down there to find him, and he had been killed and dismembered by a bull.
Wow.
And so eventually, finally, the bull left and took his cows with him, and we got down and went back to the lodge because it was like, we don't want any part of this. So that was literally probably when I was so lucky to still be here.
Call. Wow. Yeah. I'm curious, how many times have you heard the guide say, you should have been here last week, there was game all over the place, and you haven't seen a deer all week long?
You know, that is a thing, and it's real.
Oh,
too.
sure.
It's
yeah.
real, because one of the things I have learned is the one thing as hunters, you can go to the best places in the world to hunt. The one thing we can't overcome when it comes to whitetail hunting, and probably mule deer hunting, but especially whitetail hunting, you can't overcome warmer than normal temperatures. So if we show up, it can be the best place in the world, but if we show up about the time they have a heat front or a warm front or big temperatures, it makes the hunting very, very tough.
Yeah.
And I've learned over the years that heat, unseasonably warm temperatures will derail the best of hunting plans, for sure. That's the one thing.
I was going to ask you, what's the most extreme weather you've been in where, it obviously impacted hunting? Extreme cold, extreme heat.
The extreme cold, obviously, to be honest with you, was the coldest I've ever been was not in Canada. It was not even in the northern U.S. The coldest I've ever been was in South Texas.
Really?
Yes, people, they don't understand that, but Bill and I were hunting South Texas years ago, and one afternoon it was like 90 degrees. But the weather said there was a cold front coming in, an Arctic blast coming in. That afternoon it was 90 degrees. By the following afternoon, it was like 23 degrees and 50-mile-an-hour winds.
Oh my gosh.
And if you take that kind of temperature with that kind of wind and that kind of humidity, that's the coldest I've ever been.
The wind chill had to be around zero.
The humidity was outrageous.
Wow.
A lot of people come to the South that are from Canada, and I will tell you, 0 degrees in Saskatchewan during deer season with no wind, it's literally like 30 degrees here. But you put that humidity in there, that was very extreme. And I've sat in the tree stand before whitetail hunting when the heat index was 108, 110. That's not any fun either.
Yeah. I'm curious, after all these years, I guess, how long did it take you to develop that sixth sense, that gut feeling, where you're in camp for a few hours and you're going, this is going nowhere. We got to get out. We got to pack up and get out. I'm curious, how long did it take you to develop that sixth sense?
Probably a decade or so.
Yeah.
But you learn to read people's body language, even not just what they're saying, but how they're saying it. You learn to read that.
That's a good.
There's just boxes that they check when you're asking them questions about the hunt or the terrain or the country or the animals or whatever. Their responses will tell you everything you need to know if you read between the lines, because you're going to get the formed response. But you learn that when an outfitter tells you things that are simply too good to believe, they probably are. Like I saw 4 170-inch bucks last week out of the tree you're going to be sitting in. We haven't had anybody hunt this property in 2 years.
Yeah, you hear that a lot.
So you just go, okay, well, the better answer would have been, there's a good deer around, but instead of 4 170-inch deer, people are trying too hard to impress us. And back in the early days of Realtree Outdoors, before there were a lot of TV shows, we were getting inundated with hunt requests. Everybody wanted us to come hunt with them to make their phone ring so they could book hunts.
Sure.
Nowadays, that's not the case because there's over 400 hunting shows on all platforms.
Yeah.
And so we would get a lot of invites. and you really had to wade through the ones that were legit and the ones that weren't. And you just learn, really. But I think a lot of it's about reading somebody's body language and looking in their eyes when they talk.
Yeah. That's interesting. Well, I know we could talk all week long about Hunts from Hell.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm always struck by people who think, oh gosh, the Realtree guys, Bill and David, everything's perfect, everything runs smoothly. They go out, kill 170 class buck, and that's it. That ain't the case, and these few stories really do tell the story.
Well, one year I had a back-to-back hunts in Canada. A week in Alberta, a week in Saskatchewan, back-to-back. Hunted the entire week in Saskatchewan from daylight to dark. Never saw a shooter during November. Went over to Alberta, hunted the first 5 days, never saw a shooter, daylight to dark. And only on the last day that we could hunt, on that Saturday, an hour and a half before sunset, we saw a shooter and killed him. So that was 12 days of hunting to see one shooter buck. Yes, and so,
yeah,
but
that's
perseverance.
That's hunting.
It's hunting. It's real hunting. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the time that one of our cameramen, we got these brand new fancy cameras, Beta SP cameras, back in the mid-90s. And these cameras literally were 60 grand a piece.
Yeah.
But it's what you had to have footage that would qualify for broadcast television. Back in the day, we were on TNN, the national network. Well, you couldn't submit video unless it came from a Beta SP camera.
I see.
And they were expensive. And we had this brand new Beta SP camera. And one of our cameramen, we were at the Milk River. And Ben McDonald, our old friend from Louisiana, ball player, had shot this really nice buck on video with his cameraman. Well, so they go down, they recover the deer, they do the interview with the deer in the alfalfa field, and he fell out in the alfalfa field. Well, here comes the rancher to pick us up in his pickup truck, and the rancher pulls in, it's dark, and we got flashlights shining, and he starts to back up to the deer, and we hear this crunch. Oh, yeah.
It's the camera.
It's the brand new Beta SP camera
$60,000
that the cameraman had set in the alfalfa field, and the alfalfa was almost knee-high. And forgot it was there, forgot where he set it. Of course, the rancher didn't know. Ran smooth over a brand new camera.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, again, it's always something. It's never perfect, like people tend to believe. And, you can't control Mother Nature. You really don't know the outfitter until you arrive on scene. And, there's just so many things you cannot control. But anyhow, appreciate the storytelling, David. I wish we had more time to somewhere down the road we'll get together.
we could go on and on and on. Yeah, we have a lot of memories.
Oh my gosh, for sure.
A lot of memories.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jim.